My tourism family, I greet you well. You've made a wise decision to arm yourselves with as much information as you can regarding the robust health and safety protocols that have been established to tackle COVID-19. In these unprecedented times, knowledge is power, and your cooperation will help us to get back to normality sooner than later. Each module of this training program targets a different subsector of the tourism industry. And although some guidelines are generic, there are also sector-specific requirements. I encourage you to absorb the information as much as possible and to share with those you know, particularly the ones most impacted by these unfortunate circumstances. Your health and that of your guests is top priority. And while we want to keep everyone safe, we understand that reopening the sector is crucial for all our sustenance. This sector has been a lifesaver for so many of us, and my ministry and its agencies want to continue to contribute to that well-being. As you are aware, the global COVID-19 pandemic halted the sector for a few months. This resulted in many of our tourism workers being displaced and uncertain of their future. With this in mind, we impressed upon you to take charge of your own health and safety and those around you as we traverse this rocky road. It is said that tough times don't last, but tough people do. We are tough, we are resilient, and together we can get through this pandemic. We have learned many lessons that have paved the way for a new tourism. And with your help and in time, we will be a sector like we've never been before. Learn all you can from presentations and make the necessary changes as you go back into your workspaces. Pleasant viewing and stay safe.
Safe and resilient tourism has consistently been a foundational element of Jamaica's tourism industry. Tourists and Jamaicans alike have high expectations for Jamaica, a top Caribbean tourist destination. These protocols take into account the health, safety, and well-being of tourists, employees, and communities seeking to reduce the risk of exposure to COVID-19. These protocols are designed to support consistent standards across the industry and represent the joint requirements of the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Jamaica Tourist Board, and Tourism Development Company Limited in collaboration with the JHTA, that's the Jamaica Hotel Tourist Association. The goal of the Ministry of Tourism's COVID-19 health and safety protocols is to strengthen Jamaica's resilience to COVID-19 and safeguard all stakeholders within the tourism ecosystem. These include our workers, communities, and tourists. The specific objectives include the following: provide guidelines to enable consistent recovery protocols, support health and economic risk management across the tourism industry, provide a framework to drive quality assurance of implemented protocols and regular monitoring, maximize effective recovery by facilitating and improving the flow of information and coordination, enhance and coordinate recovery intelligence gathering and information sharing capabilities. There are 8 key health and safety elements of the Jamaica tourism sector: sanitization stations, 2, face masks or personal protective equipment, 3, physical distancing, 4, clear, frequent, and consistent messaging, 5, technology enablement, 6, real-time monitoring and reporting, 7, rapid and clear response, 8, training, Training should be done for the entire tourism industry to help to ensure workers are equipped to manage protocols based on their role. For hotels, COVID-19 safety point persons, that's the SPP, a minimum of 1 employee at any time during the opening hours of the venue must be specifically trained and designated COVID-19 safety point person. The SPP should conduct regular spot checks throughout the property and observe protocols being enacted. The SPP should also serve as a point of contact for employee and guest complaints and is required to document, investigate, and triage complaints. Depending on the size of the location, the COVID-19 SPP can be a full-time position or the duties may be allocated to an existing employee, such as a director, manager, or a supervisor. Supplies that you need to have in place, alcohol-based hand sanitizers, and we all know that this should be 60% alcohol or above. Medical grade PPE, we're talking about face shield, gloves, gowns, and aprons. Spray disinfectant or wipes. No contact handheld thermometer. And we need to have at least 1 per entrance and 1 for staff. Masks should be worn and disposable gloves should be made available. Measuring devices such as tape measure and yardstick, indicators, flags, markers, stakes, cones, etc. Back of house and front of house signage for protocols should be in place. Single-use paper napkins or towels should also be in place. Soap dispensers and free garbage cans with covers. Our employee well-being, and this is something that I'm sure most persons are concerned with going into the field now, working in this environment. Reopening will be gradual with staggered starting times for employees to allow for smoother rollout and management of testing and care. Ensure all employees are healthy upon their return to work through a health questionnaire similar to the questionnaire administered to potential tourists. Checking formally on your health of employees on a regular basis, at least every 4 to 6 weeks, and if they are showing symptoms or have other risk factors, testing may be appropriate. Those who test positive are required to be reported to the Ministry of Health and Wellness for quarantine and contact tracing. Take the temperature of each employee upon arrival of their shift. Recommend that all employees change clothes to a fresh set of work-provided uniform upon arrival to work once they have signed in. Launder clothing for employees if possible. All employees are required to sign a COVID-19 paper or an electronic login sheet at start of the shift, which includes confirmation that, 1, to the best of their knowledge, they have not been exposed to anyone with COVID-19. 2, they do not have symptoms of COVID-19. Require all employees to wear masks throughout their work shift and in an interaction with patrons. Require all employees to sanitize or wash their hands regularly throughout their shift, a minimum of once per hour. Cleaning activities. Require all cleaners to wear protective apparel while conducting cleaning duties, example, mask, gloves, and disposal apron. Wash all laundry and reusable items in water at least 60 degrees Celsius or above. Wash all food service items, plates, glassware, serving trays, etc., in water at 80 degrees Celsius or above. Sanitize all public touch points on a rotating basis throughout the operating hours, with each surface being cleaned at a minimum every 2 hours. That is door handles, desk, elevator buttons, etc. Handle waste using gloves, tongs, and bag waste properly. Perform routine maintenance of air conditioning vents or filters to promote indoor air quality and limit exposure. Entrances and common areas. Utilize automatic doors, keep doors open if possible, or have doors manned by one person to mitigate excessive contact of one surface by multi-individuals. Mark the ground with physical distance line spacing for queues both inside and outside of the establishment. Erect hand sanitizing dispensers or hand wash stations at the entrance to the establishment. Include signage in clear and visible areas throughout the property. Reporting must occur 2 to 3 hours of identifying a suspected case. Reporting should be made first to the local parish public health facility and then to the national level. Compile a full report at the property on a weekly basis to review suspected contact and actions taken and submit to the management team. Report suspected cases of contact with COVID-19 positive persons in a real time to the local Ministry of Health and Wellness representative. Include date and time, signs and symptoms observed, age and gender of the person showing symptoms and the activities that they were involved in. Ensure all employees are familiar and know to report suspected cases or contact with COVID-19 positive persons to the following: the parish public health facilities, our Ministry of Health COVID website, and you can call 1-888-1-LOVE. Those are the 3 areas that you can report your cases to. Guest interaction. We all know that our guests come here to interact with people, so we still need to greet them with warmth and friendliness. Remember that our guests visiting are here to relax and enjoy the beauty and culture of our Jamaican people. Remind guests of protocols with a smile in a polite and respectful manner. Remind employees that they can accept tips as offered if allowable by the hotel policy. Sanitize or wash hands after receiving same. Guest arrival. Supply the front desk, concierge station, luggage service, and other lobby services with hand sanitizers. Take the temperature of each guest upon arrival. Those with an elevated temperature and or visible symptoms should be documented and moved into the designated isolation room on the property for screening by the SPP. Check-in. Allow the contactless digital check-in where possible. Require guests to complete a travel declaration and contact tracing form upon check-in. Allow for the option for the completion of the form electronically prior to arrival or over email. Provide guests with a printed or electronic copy of the safety protocols. Information should contain the steps taken to safeguard employees and guests, expectations of guests while on property, who to contact for questions or concerns in regards to the property, how to report suspected COVID-19 cases or exposure, and how to contact the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Utilize digital key cards or disposable key cards when possible. If traditional keys are used, a central drop box or drop boxes will be utilized, awaiting disinfecting between uses. Discontinue holding of keys at the front desk on behalf of guests to limit the number of times the key is exchanged. Wear disposable gloves when handling luggage of patrons. Dispose of gloves after each use in nearby hands-free garbage can with a cover. Do not enter the guest room when dropping off luggage. Leave the luggage outside and have the guest bring it into the room. Restrict access to luggage storage rooms to employees only. Wear gloves when retrieving luggage and dispose of gloves after retrieving each group's luggage. Sanitize luggage carts after each use with alcohol-based sanitizer. And again, it's 60% alcohol or above. Sitting areas. Arrange furniture in the waiting area to allow physical distancing. And that's the 6 feet apart as we're here today seated. Disinfect benches, chairs, handles, railings. This should be done continuously throughout the day. A minimum of 3 times per day is required. Remove shared reception material, including magazines and books. Remove shared self-service refreshments, that is water, coffee, tea, etc., from the reception areas. Room amenities. Suspend minibars and in-room sale of items until further notice. Remove movable decorations or room amenities to limit guest touching. Remove extra pillows, blankets, linens, etc. in the room to limit exposure. Discontinue the delivery of newspaper. Offer guests the option for a relaxed housekeeping schedule where cleaning only occurs less frequently as opposed to each day as determined by between the property and the guest. Require wearing of single-use masks, single-use gloves, aprons, and closed-toe shoes when servicing each room. Sanitize all surfaces, tables, dressers, nightstands, sinks, and countertops. Discontinue nightly or evening turn-down service to facilitate minimal contact and entry into the guest room. Whenever possible, restaurants should be naturally ventilated. Determine the new capacity of restaurants based on physical distancing guidelines and the recommendation of approximately 6 feet per person or group. Post signs listing the new maximum capacity. Remove shared condiments such as ketchup, mustard, hot sauce, salt and pepper shakers. Encourage large groups, 6 and above, to make reservations beforehand and establish a maximum amount of reservations that can be made for any day. Maximized group size should be no more than 10 individuals. Reduce seating capacity to 70%. Ensure there is at least 6 feet of space between tables, or if furniture is immovable, ensure guests or groups of guests are seated 6 feet apart from other groups or guests. Remove the ability for patrons to seat themselves and guide patrons to seats to ensure distance between tables is maintained. Utilize hotel digital interface where possible to display menus and encourage patrons to use their personal phones to browse food options in lieu of receiving a physical menu. Information for link should be placed at the entrance and or on the walls in the restaurant. Discourage the use of multiple-use menu if digital operations are not available. Use either signage or disposable printed menus. Printed menus must be discarded after use. Unless laminated, it should be sanitized after each use. Disinfect hands upon each completed pickup and delivery of food to each table. Utilize single-use tablecloths or change linen after each guest party. Utilize single-use tablecloths or change linens after each guest party. Underused linens using gloves and deposit into a bin or bag with a cover or which can be sealed or closed. A drawstring bag can be used until transported to the laundry facility. Eliminate guest service on all buffet and bar operations. Require that all stations be manned by a dedicated staff member handling utensils and serving food. Install glass, plastic, or plexiglass shield between food and patrons if possible. Remove common condiments and food laying out in large quantities, not behind a glass, plastic, plexiglass shield. These include salt, pepper, oil, butter, and sugar cubes. Ensure all service and standards are in accordance with ASAP. If a patron touches food, sneezes near food, or similar, we have to discard that food because it's now contaminated. Masks should be worn, single-use gloves, and earnets during food preparation. Separate zones within the kitchen for employees to work by placing markers or stickers on the floor. Separate workstations where possible, so staff are not facing each other when working. Stagger workers on counters, tables, and cooktops for food preparation. Restrict access of kitchen and storage areas to kitchen and wait staff only. Maintain smaller than normal inventories in the event of possible contamination and the need to destroy stored items. Adhere to ASAP system protocols updated in the context of COVID-19. Payment. You need to install a glass, plastic, or plexiglass shield around certain areas of your cashier stations, if possible, to create a barrier between your patrons and cashiers. Encourage use of digital POS systems where possible to reduce cash transactions. Notify patrons of preference for cashless payments prior to entering so they may plan accordingly. Encourage physical distancing of cash registers by spacing stations 6 feet apart where possible and when there are multiple cash register stations. Sanitize or wash hands after interaction with customer credit cards, card machines, and cash. Sanitize the check presentation folder with an alcohol base and sanitizer, and this should be done after each guest handling and use. We are to determine the adjusted physical distance maximum capacity of the beach area or beach park. Beach chairs, umbrellas, huts, only under the supervision of an attendant should be provided. Sanitize the chair, umbrella, hut after each guest or guest party uses it. Sanitize water equipment after each use, that's life jackets, snorkel equipment, kayaks, pedal boats, banana boats, oars, etc. You have to manage this process through an inventory and numbering system. All equipment is to be numbered and logged when it is checked out, returned, and cleaned. This will provide a record of sanitation. Limit the number of passengers per water sports vessel to 70% capacity to allow for physical distancing. Require patrons to sanitize or wash their hands before boarding or engaging in a water sport activity. Discontinue the service of buffet on excursion vessels and require that food and drinks are to be served by a staff. Enforce physical distancing in water through the use of beach attendants and lifeguards. Allow groups of family and friends who have arrived together to congregate in the water. Consider removing reusable water toys, example, floating devices, hammocks, games, water, trampolines. Or ensure sanitation procedures are in place throughout the day. For towels, require employees working at the towel huts to wear disposable gloves when handing out towels to patrons. Patrons are not allowed to take towels. They must be handed by an employee wearing gloves. Discontinue the use of towel cards and instead document identifying the information of the person renting or utilizing the towels. That is, you take their last name and room number down, etc. Whatever information you can get. Designate a no-touch towel return bin which patrons can deposit towels without employees handling them. Remove all unreturned or unused towels periodically throughout the day and at the end of the day, wearing a mask and using thongs. You have to designate a minimum of 1 isolation room on your property to take workers or guests if they show signs or have an elevated temperature. Either on-site medical professional or the SPP can perform an initial assessment to determine the appropriate escalation. If appropriate, the medical professional or SPP should contact the Ministry of Health and Wellness immediately. Equip the isolation room with medical-grade PPE, masks, face shields, disposable gloves, disposable aprons, and gowns for the worker. Isolate the guest in the room while awaiting a test from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Follow instructions provided by the ministry. Sanitize isolation room upon exit of the guest. Transport clean and dirty laundry separately, which I know this is normally done, from the property to the laundry facilities using closed bag and with staff wearing gloves. So no longer taking up the bags without gloves. We are insisting that you handle these with gloves. Dedicate 1 area of the laundry for washing exposed or suspected exposed items. Ensure these items are stored in a separate area with a cover and are not able to be accidentally commingled with non-exposed or clean laundry. Label bins for laundry. So you can label a bin that says clean, dirty, and another one that says high risk for COVID-19 contamination. Clean and disinfect the front loading of the machines regularly throughout the day at a minimum of 2 hours at each end of a shift. Determine work zones for laundry staff. Example, staff engaging with dirty laundry versus those with clean laundry to limit the potential for contamination where possible. Wash all laundry, including linens, towels, robes, pillows, uniforms, etc., in a water temperature above 60 degrees Celsius. Clean and disinfect the front loading of the machines regularly throughout the day at a minimum of every 2 hours at the end of each shift. What to do if, and this is a question, while on my property, a guest begins to develop symptoms of COVID-19, what do I do? What to do if? The answer. The guest should be offered assistance and on-site medical professional or the SPP should perform an initial assessment and immediately contact the Ministry of Health and Wellness at 888-663-5683 if it is appropriate. The guest should be taken to the designated isolation room on the property to await instructions from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Thank you all for listening. We are now open up for questions and answers.
My name is Pauline Brady. I was sent here via JAMVAC. I am a performer. On the information slot, I have not seen nothing saying entertainers nor coordinators or anything like that. So I read it through and took my initiative because today says hotels, blah, 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 and etc. So I put myself as an entertainer in the etc. section. Now, I have not heard anything at all, listening, what entertainers should and should not do. Thank you. Oh, as you know, we all interact with the guests almost than anybody else.
Where entertainment is concerned, the physical distancing still needs to be adhered to. So the 6 feet apart, the sanitizing of the devices that are used, the microphones, if you have karaoke sessions. What if you are having entertainment in your bars, in your sports bar, whatever area it may be, the physical distancing still needs to be maintained. So you still need to have the markers on the floors. The games, any means of entertainment that requires interaction or physical contact, it would be better to limit that to couples, or you do away with those types of entertainment. All right, so it means that you will need to go back and rework, strategize, and come up with different means of entertainment for your patrons. The distance between your patrons and the entertainment staff at your entity, the 6 feet apart, needs to be adhered to as well. In addition to what we just shared, there are two other ways that you can get information. On Monday, we will be focusing on entertainment. Additionally, there's a document, the protocol document will be, or it is being sent out to you now as we speak. So at the point of registration, if you had put in your email address, then the protocol document incorporates or has information on entertainment, and so you can look in that area where it gives you more details. Fair enough? Yes? Okay, you're welcome.
Hi, morning everyone. In your presentation, you mentioned single-used aprons, masks, and all of that. In terms of aprons, right, when you say single-use, does that mean disposable aprons? Because since the Go Green thing, we have not been able to source single-use aprons. So where do we get those single-use aprons to use? The next thing, will you guys send us the presentation, if possible, via email? And do you have generic questionnaires that you mentioned that should be in line with the protocols to present to guests when they come?
It is a matter of you interacting now with your suppliers for them to source that for you.
So have the government lift the restrictions on those single-use items because they were banned during the...
I get where you're going now. I see where you're going now. All right, this is a question that we will have to take back to the team for further exploration, and then through the means of sending you the protocol document, we will communicate on that based on our findings. Your second question is in regards to, well, as mentioned, the protocol document will be sent out. It will not be this presentation. This presentation was compiled from the document that you will be getting. In addition to that, the presentation that we're doing now and the ones previously held, they are recorded and those will be on our website. So the link will be there and you can go and replay it and you will see this presentation again. All right? The generic questionnaires, no. We do not produce the questionnaires. The questionnaire is something that, based on your property, what it is that you would want to, because each property has its own standards, and so there might be something that my property wants my patrons to answer to that you might not need. And so we would not produce those questionnaires for you. that is left for you to do. However, in the presentation, you will notice that we give you some generic questions that you will need to have in it, just as a starter for your questionnaire.
I represent villas rather than small hotels and short-term rentals, so I have a few questions you might be able to help me with. First of all, in the document that you produced, you mention in one area that there should be 72 hours between cleaning of a room, possibly, and then twice you mentioned that the idea is to have 24 hours between each reservation or room occupation. So I really just want to clarify, because that's going to change how every villa does business if they have to wait 24 hours between each booking.
All right, from my recollection, the 72 hours, oh, that's the end of, that's your last question?
No, I've got quite a few.
So go ahead.
Oh, you don't want to each? You're never going to remember them all.
That's right, that's right.
So that's my first one. Is what I want to know is it mandatory or is it an advisory?
All right, the 72 hours from the document is if you have an infected patron. Let's say I stayed at your property,
right,
and I am a COVID-19 patient. Once I check out, then that room needs to sit for 3 days before you can utilize it again. So that is where that 72 hours would come in.
Okay.
The 24 hours, I forgot.
It's in 3 places. It's under checkout, it's under cleaning,
right,
and it's under wait period. And it says 24 hours in each. Now, just for example, COVID, this protocol may last 3 months, it may last 9 months. Yeah. And whilst we had no bookings, currently they've been postponed or cancelled, right, we have a full season coming up in November and going through into 2021. So those calendars have all been booked back to back, Saturday to Saturday in high season. So is it an advisory or is it mandatory that we have to change people who are coming now into either 6-day rentals or to completely change the calendars that is a day between?
The 24-hour part of it is just to allow the room if they, all right. Where COVID-19 is concerned, remember that the symptoms are not presentable right away. So if the possibility exists that the person who checked out developed the virus, then that is why it is advised to leave the room for 24 hours before.
So it's cautionary and advisory.
It's a cautionary. And remember, these protocols, they're not set in stone. As we progress, as more information come up where this virus is concerned, you will find that the changes will be sent out to you in terms of operations. So it's a possibility that based on developments with this virus, how we manage ourselves with it, that 24 hours will right, be eliminated from the list of protocols.
Of course, we're all trying to advertise our properties that we are doing the best we can. So the importance of mandatory or advisory is useful. Thank you. One point I do want to make mention is that we need to be careful with the 2 words sanitize and disinfection. They're 2 different things. To sanitize means just to have safely clean, and to disinfect means to clean 100% of the germs. And in the document, there's quite a lot of the word sanitize, not disinfect. So I think that's something that we should be cautious about. Second, my last question. Phase 1 and 2, the corridors for arrivals. The minister in his webinar last week said that the corridor 1, which is the North Coast corridor, is going to be a phase 1, and then the South Coast and Kingston is going to be in phase 2. I have guests arriving at the end of July, middle of July, going to the South Coast. Does that mean they won't be able to actually go to the South Coast, or is it just mean that the medical backup isn't on the South Coast? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. I heard the last section in terms of the South Coast aspect of it. Now, the minister said we'll have a resilience corridor, hence the name, doing phase 1 on the North Coast. Phase 2 will be the next. If you can have your guests, I would say not at this moment, based on what the minister says, because he wants to have control over where guests are. It's a controlled environment, there being properties, control thing. So, who knows, maybe there can be exceptions to the rule, right to the minister. Said, okay, I am requesting my protocol assessment be done, I have everything in place, I'm perfect, and maybe an exemption can be made because you are so well prepared in your area ahead of everybody else. But that's not for me to say. I can only say what the minister said.
Okay.
And focusing on the north coast from Negril, which is the vast majority of our tourism area, the entire north coast, from Negril Point to Portland.
Okay. And I have one more question, sorry. The other thing is it says a maximum of 10 in any group, but obviously our villas can sleep up to 20 people, 25 people. So again, it's an advisory rather than a mandatory, correct?
Well, the villas will be a bit different from the hotels, yes, because that will be an entire group traveling together.
Yes, and obviously as a villa we have to take these, because they're not specific, whereas a hotel you're very clear on what you're requesting. There are many things in a villa that we are not going to do that perhaps a hotel does, because it's one unit that's traveling together and therefore they're happy to be in a pool together or sharing a dinner table together. Correct.
Right. It will be different for a villa, but of course you have to ensure that your team members have their protective equipment at all times, and practice all the procedures, sanitizing, cleaning protocols that might even have to be heightened, increased, because of the high number of persons and the dense population and mingling of your guests.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In regard to the operation of villas, you had mentioned in the presentation that if a guest contracts a virus, you have to have them in a specific room. This would be particularly challenging for villa operators like myself, because if you have a set of guests who are here for 7 days, who then check out and you have another set coming, there would be no way to accommodate a guest for however long, however many weeks. Is the government going to put something in place to better accommodate these tourists who are not staying in a hotel, because a hotel or a guest house may have 20, 30, 300 rooms that they could actually relocate a guest. A 4-bedroom villa will not have that accommodation. And obviously what I've seen so far in terms of the government quarantine centers, I don't think any tourists, much less us, would want to go there. So how does this go forward for small operators like villas with very few rooms?
Well, point well taken, but bear in mind that if you have somebody that you highly suspect has been infected, you would immediately contact the Ministry of Health, and the decision would then lie with them. So it's a case where we'll monitor them, they're tested, they're actually not sick. So then you rule it out immediately. Right?
No, but what if they are, what
well,
if while they're here they come down with the virus, what then? What do we villa operators do? The
Ministry of Health will make that determination. It's a case where the other facilities are unable to facilitate them and say, hey, we must keep them here. You guys are a network. You have other places that might be able to facilitate them.
No, we don't. That's why I'm asking you the question, because
the Ministry of Health will make that final determination, because at that point, you are at the most extreme situation, and it can't be business as usual.
All right, so that is a real possibility. So at this point, I understand that there's nothing in place by the government to deal with tourists who are staying in a small villa if they come down, because you then realize that it affects the next set of guests who are coming. Then they can't come if the Ministry of Health comes and says that these guests have to stay where they are.
That is a real possibility that we might have to deal with in reality. But then even the other guests that are in the villa at that very same time would also probably need to be isolated or quarantined, and to ensure that they're all safe and all clear as well. So you might have the entire villa occupied and not just worried about that one room, because they all would have been mingling and together and eating and playing and hugging and kissing, because more than likely they're a family.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, I want to carry on where Mrs. Della Penna finished.
Sure.
I think it is important that we get to know what happens. So for me, I run a villa company, so I deal with clients coming in from the US, and we have over 105 villas that I personally represent. So I'm telling an American tourist what's going to happen when they arrive, and I imagine many people here do the same thing. So if they test positive on arrival at Sangster, probably Sangster, what will you do with them? Will you put them into government quarantine, so a hotel at the government, like Jewel and Bahia, or what will you do? You won't be sending them to their villa, you'll be taking them out of the system, correct?
Correct. That is, chances are they would not be sent to the villa.
I can't hear you, sorry?
It's a chance that the Ministry of Health would then take, I would say, possession of those guests and put them in a facility.
And it will be a government facility, because that's a question I'm being asked.
Well, the Ministry of Health would be best to answer that, because there are
But
arrangements
we as tourism, we need to know that.
That's what I'm saying. So we have to seek clarity from the Ministry of Health where that's concerned, because remember, initially, some properties had volunteered their space because they were not space in hospitals. So,
but of course now we're open, so those hotels, I wouldn't imagine, are offering their space anymore.
A chance that would have to be a government facility. As you said, they might not be so willing to go there, but it's what we'll need to do to keep everyone safe.
And then that would obviously lead on to what Mrs. Della Penna said about what if somebody gets COVID during their time in a villa or a guest house. It's the ministry that then would remove them all, and put them into a facility? Correct.
For isolation, testing, etc.
Okay, and it's the Ministry of Health that I should contact to find out that specifically?
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning. I'm here to present Airbnbs. I haven't heard anything. In regards to Airbnbs, it's not like guest houses where you go and somebody check you in. You do self-check-in most times. So what if the person comes to the house, or, yes, basically the house, and they're there, we have nobody there going to clean the area if they're here for a week? How will we know if the person has some sort of symptoms afterwards? We will not know that. So if we have bookings back to back, which is, as she said, Saturday to Saturday, and the person there has symptoms and we have no idea, the person said nothing, we clean in the area or sanitize, disinfect, whichever it is at the time, getting the linens clean. Do you suggest that we wash those bed linens with warm water now, or do we do our regular disinfecting? What do you suggest we do?
Both. If you take the hotel model, for instance, once a guest goes into a room, you might have things that they seemingly may not have used, or a table may not have used. You strip everything, you clean and sanitize the area. So you might have to adjust how you do your bookings to give yourself the sufficient time to clean and sanitize all areas, even more so than you used to do before. All right, strip down curtains, sheet bed linen right down to the bottom, sanitize the mattress.
Okay.
Completely. So you might have to adjust because you have to ensure that it's safe for the next set of guests. So the contactless aspect of it, the self-check-in thing that you might do, that is good for protecting you, but some persons also have a housekeeper that might come in. Or you could defer that offering. So you say you're responsible for the cleanliness of the villa whilst you're there, of the accommodation whilst you're there, but when you come in, after they leave, you have to strip and sanitize from top to bottom. Of course, your team members taking the necessary precautions to protect themselves because they'll be going in after, which is very important, which we want to ensure that all people, your people, are kept safe in the mix as well.
Okay, another question. There are some Airbnbs that offer additional services, thank you, in regards to providing breakfast. Do you suggest we do the breakfast at the house, or can we do the breakfast somewhere else and take it there, which is breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Is it
either? It's up to you. You have to make the determination. This is a detailed guide, and there are many ways to skin a cat. So you must see if it is more feasible and safer for your team to have the meals prepared and taken there, or if the kitchen is in the back, the guests are in the front, they prepare it there. So the call is yours, but as long as you adhere to the safety protocols of protective equipment and the cleaning and sanitizing protocols. So it's your call, but bear in mind, you must adhere to all of the necessary safety precautionary measures.
Would there be anything in the email that will be sent with information for Airbnb? Because all I'm seeing is guest houses, villas.
But it's the same. It's the same.
Oh,
it's the same.
okay.
Because bear in mind, Airbnb in reality is a marketing platform for entities to be sold. So you have villas and apartments and even hotels that are on the Airbnb platform. So it's just that they're pulling you in because they say, oh, I'm not a villa, I'm not a, I'm an Airbnb, so you're trying to exclude yourself from the mix. But letting you that you are all a part of it.
Okay.
And all these things should be included, including yourself as an Airbnb. And question, are your Airbnb licensed by the Jamaica Tourist Board?
We're just starting, so I just wanted
Just started.
to get some.
Okay, well, you need to visit us, have a
I know
facilitation
people
done.
who do it, so I'm also here to
Are there
present them.
accommodations
I
licensed
can't
by the Jamaica Tourist
confirm
Board?
I'm sorry?
Are there accommodations licensed by the Jamaica Tourist Board?
I can't confirm that.
Well,
I'm not able to confirm.
Well,
I
you
will
can speak
ask
for
though.
yourself. And please move forward to try to get your entities licensed by the Jamaica Tourist Board. It enables you, gives you more power, more privileges, access to various things, and you'll be operating within purview of the Jamaica Tourist Board Act, which all accommodations must be licensed by that organization.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I'm with Villas, and okay, so we have villas with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms. Is there anything mandatory to say we have to have dispensers, or can we just use the bottles of sanitizers?
The bottles are fine as long as you have hand sanitizer available. If you want to wall mount it, because for aesthetics, it might not be nice for your villa to have it on the wall, so you might want to have them in pump bottles. That's fine.
So there's no amount that if we have the dispensers on the walls, is there any set amount that we have to have per bedroom?
No, I'd say it's not a cookie cutter thing. You know the layout of your property. So you might say you have your living room area, have one that the living and dining room might share. And it might be a corridor of rooms, so you might have one that could probably serve for 2 rooms here and the other rooms are there. So you have to strategically locate the sanitizer dispensers.
Okay.
That's what I would
Second
say.
question, signage. Is signage, do we have to have signs put up, sanitize here,
Yes,
wash hands, whatever?
I would
Is
say
that
yes.
compulsory?
I would say put it up. I would encourage you to put it up because it's a constant reminder. People on vacation, they're absent-minded, so when these reminders are there, it's for your safety.
But when...
Morning, everyone. Just to
Sandra.
add to that, we do recognize that in some high-end properties, you may not want large displays, which can make an entity look rather sterile. So we would accept, for example, tent cards being put in conspicuous locations throughout the property, recognizing your need for aesthetics as important. There is some flexibility where that is concerned because we do recognize that would be one of your concerns, to maintain the aesthetics of a property. And as I say, tent cards would be acceptable once they're conspicuously placed.
Okay. And so when you're coming, when the inspectors are going to the villas, they will know and understand that villas basically went to families and small groups who are friends. So the distancing, the things that most of what has been said would not really apply to the villas. Now, would the inspectors be aware of this and not mark us based on the other criteria for small guest house or something like that?
Well, we would be looking at the plan that you have submitted and working with you according to what you have stated that you are able to do in order to meet these protocols. So we would be bearing in mind not just the protocols that have come out from the government, but also your plan and what you have said you're able to do to meet the requirements.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So it's based on what we tell you. So if we don't have something that you are looking for in particular, then you won't mark us down for it.
Put it like this, if it is a critical item, it would be a recommendation that would be made and that we would hope that in short order you would be able to put that in place.
But certainly we will look at what you have in terms of your plan and work with you as best we can as well.
There is a recommendation for a designated person at the property, the villa, the guest house, or the hotel, who would be designated as the COVID response person. Is that so?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so if that's so, is that a training that's going to be delivered by the public health, like a food handlers? So there's a certification, and is that something that's going to be linked to licensing?
No, I'm not aware that there's going to be specific training for that person, but certainly that person needs to be well versed in the protocols and the requirement and keep up to date in terms of what is going on in that area.
So how do you say that this person is a designated person?
Well,
It's just for the villa to put it in the guidelines?
You will select that person. You will make that determination. You will ensure that that person is knowledgeable in the area and fit for the purpose, able to do the necessary observations, etc. So you, as a property, will determine who the best person is for that position.
All right, so just
I mean,
to be
again, it
fair-
doesn't have to be just that position alone. Another person, for example, a manager, can also take on that as an additional responsibility at the property.
All right, so just to be clear, there's no specific training for the designation of this person?
No.
Either by TPDCo or the Ministry of Health?
No, we're not aware of any specific training for that person.
Right, so it
But
might be a
yes,
suggestion
it
to
is a
put it-
person, however, that must be well versed. That person would have to have a good knowledge. So it would be incumbent on that person to read up to make sure they're well versed and knowledgeable in that area, well aware of the requirements, etc., and the contact information, and knows how to move in any situation.
So it might be a suggestion that the food handlers training, which is sort of very superficial, to be upgraded to advise them of the new sanitization requirements for this designation or the requirements.
I would take that recommendation, and I think it's a very good recommendation. I would expect that some of the COVID protocol information should now be included in the food hygiene, absolutely. So that can be shared with public health as a recommendation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, representing a sector of the tourism industry, which is a sector which social distance is a problem, right? The spas. Now, nothing much has been said, right? Because that's one industry that you don't really have a lot of social distance. So is there a protocol for persons like us in that area?
I think there are certain areas that we're asked to exclude. So, for example, facials, which involves a lot of physical hand contact on the facial area, those sort of areas are asked to really be removed from the spa treatments. So I think the protocols, though, do cover the spa area as well. And there are some considerations there in terms of the type of treatments that are to be removed from the offering that is being made, based on the situation and the risk.
So for facial, even if persons wearing the face shields and stuff, it's still recommended that that should be...
I think the fact that there is hand contact on the face, this is why it is considered a high-risk activity, and it is not to be considered at this time as an offering.
All right, so the protocol for that, you have it in...
Yes, it's in the general documents of the protocol. The details are there in terms of what is permitted at this time and what is not.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Good day, everyone.
Good day.
I've got this little concern. They say that elevated temperature is the first sign. If you get like a guest at your villa and they get tested, there's no elevated temperature, would you say it's wise to have them tested every day? Because they can be staying like, say, a week. Tomorrow they start showing that elevated temperature. Is it wise to have them tested every day? Or is it,
I'm not
we say no?
He's saying if he should.
especially to the manager?
It would be recommended, sir, because circumstances change and a lot of people might be asymptomatic. So for 2-3 days a week, they might not show any signs. So they arrive at your villa, they're there for 3 days, seemingly fine. And on the third day, you realize they have a temperature of 80, 90 degrees. Then you have to take action. So they then be isolated. And if it's a case where you decide that it is more urgent and you want to get them tested, then so be it. But I would recommend that you test your staff, yourself, and your guests on a daily basis. I'm sure they won't take offense to that because they're trying to keep everybody safe. And they're used to it everywhere they go. So a lot of these things that we're asking for, they're coming from places where it's mandatory and they're adhering to it. So it shouldn't be too much of an inconvenience to say. And everything, you know, is how you package it and you deliver it. So it's how you approach your guests and let them know that these things are all for your well-being and safety.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Morning. I'm
Morning.
in the villa business also.
I'm not hearing you, ma'am. I'm not hearing you.
Hi. I just wanted to ask you, you covered something just now. Is it mandatory for the guests to be screened every morning for their temperature? Because the staff have to be done twice a day, but not the guests, only upon arrival.
But I was saying I would recommend it because people will be asymptomatic. So it would be wise to constantly check, because they could be for a week asymptomatic, 2 weeks, and then the day that they're with you, halfway through their stay, they suddenly have an elevated temperature, which should not be ignored. So constant monitoring would be recommended.
So really, in your document, it says that they're screened on arrival, and they have to fill out a declaration upon arrival at their accommodation, but not to be tested again. So
that's what the document says. I'm saying I would recommend that it be done more often, just like you do it for your team members. I personally would recommend that it be done because it's safety we're dealing with, you know. It's our safety, so for yourselves, your team members, and the nation. So it's how you package it and approach the guests.
And this is why the safety point person is so important, because they will be making continuous observations of the guests, and you will know if somebody is feeling unwell. There will be other signs as well. So, you know, it's an overall look at the situation as to whether it is necessary or not. But this is why we have the SSP person in place, because that would be their role, to be very observant in terms of the condition of individuals staying guests.
all right, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you know if there are any incentives in place? I notice as well in the guideline document that there are lots of equipment that's being required for villas and guest houses other than above what they would normally have. Do you know, is there any tax alleviation, any incentives, anything that for bringing in things like hand sanitizer, the equipment?
Sister Arlene, may I ask you just to hold that question? Dr. Spencer is online, and I believe he wants to respond to the question which was posed before.
Yes, morning again. Thanks, Marlene. About the parity between guests and employees. And I think it's important that I clarify that one. The truth is, even though the document points to being screened upon arrival, the notion of temperature checks that was asked about earlier, I'm not sure who asked the question, but temperature checks are going to be daily activities as you enter various spaces in properties. So the idea is that we do not intend to have a situation of team members being consistently checked while guests are not being checked. So the idea is that there must be parity in how we treat with this, because no individual has a greater propensity for carrying than the other. And so we have to make sure that we're protecting everyone. So we would not be, for the employees, checking twice a day and not insisting that the entities carry out routine checks throughout the day for the guests as well. It's important. The reality is that we have to keep you safe, and whatever means we have to employ to keep you safe, we will do so. So even more than what you would have seen in black and white is the intention. The spirit of the document is to ensure parity across employees and visitors. On the last point too that was raised about incentives, What I can say on that is that there have been a number of discussions with the Tourism Enhancement Fund, the DBJ, Exim Bank, Jamaica National, which also, the last two entities, Exim and Jamaica National, hold the funds at the moment for the Tourism Enhancement Fund. There's a look in the ministry to see what can be done to assist with the process of getting these upgrades for smaller entities. Our emphasis is certainly on the smaller entities. There's that. There's the other part of it, which is the government's initiative. We just formed a committee recently to look at the criteria for small businesses being included in that cash grant, and it's our feeling is we've done the math and we say that essentially you want to $1.2 million what we've sort of calculated in terms of doing some of these things and getting up to speed with some of it. And so that's the sort of figure that we're looking at, anywhere between 1.2 to 1.5. And we have looked at some criteria that have stipulated that the size of the business must be considered. So small businesses will be our focus. The Ministry of Finance would have taken our recommendation and taken that forward. And what we have put as an important requirement is that these funds should be used for the preparation of receiving guests, and that will include equipment upgrade and the purchase of PPEs and so on. So we've got granular with what we have calculated, but also I think that there will be room for entities to explore what they need and customize their own requests. So yeah, we're thinking about it, and we're very concerned that there is a cost component. I couldn't speak to the other elements of incentives, which would be the purview of the Ministry of Finance, but within the Ministry of Tourism, we have considered all we can that would be within our control.
I'm employed at a villa. I'm saying in regards to guests coming down with COVID-19, in regards to the staff, will we be subjected to mandatory quarantine if this happens?
I believe so. Once you have been in contact with a person that has COVID-19, you too would need to be isolated, yes, and quarantined.
Today we have one person on the outside who has supplies. Dr. Spencer is on the line, and I think he wants to respond to the second part of the question, Arlene, which I believe relates to the timeliness of the incentives or funding that might be available. So Dr. Spencer, go ahead. She's listening in.
Timeliness of incentives that you mentioned earlier. Somebody was inquiring as to how soon they would come on stream.
Our intention is to ensure that everything comes on board. Are you hearing me? In June, all right? So one of the last things I was told by the Ministry of Finance and the TEF Executive Director is that any financial assistance that will be provided would need to certainly happen before the end of June. So we sort of have the end of June as a line in the sand for when we want to ensure that we have finalized all these arrangements.
Is it mandatory that a villa has to have a check gun there for temperature? One. Two, I'm also requesting, or maybe asking for a recommendation. What if a guest does not want to be checked daily? What would you say? What would you do about it? Because it's from your information that we have to check regular, right? Maybe daily or something like that. So what if?
Well, without a doubt, you might have some guests that might have a bit of resistance to some of these things. But it's your duty to implore them and encourage them somehow to get it done. It's for our own safety, our own good. And I understand your challenge. I honestly do. I understand what you're saying, but what are you going to do? Put everybody at risk? Have these other family members encourage them to do it, because the other family members are doing it. You know, have a civilized conversation about the importance of doing these things. You know, have the wife check him when he's asleep. Might have to resort to these tactics, really and truly, you know, by all enemies necessary. The temperature, yes, so how else do you propose to do it? No contact temperature checking, so you must acquire one, sir, because that's the only way you could take their temperature without touching the person.
It's regarding guest house. and because we need to put up signs. Now, my question is there any standardized signs available from your organization, from TPDCo also recommended, any sizes or certain text to say, like, in my opinion, a tourist going around in the island, not necessarily staying on one single place, seeing the same signs is maybe more efficient than we invent now signs with all different colors or sizes and texts, and I think it's not so helpful. So would be there any support from your side for us to know how we and what efficient signs we can put up? Is there any support from your side?
Well, the requirement is for clear and conspicuous signs. So it allows a variety of ways to get it done. As mentioned by my colleague before, some of these might be high-end villas, so they don't want signs pasted on the wall, but nice 10 cards could be there. So as long as it's easily legible from a fair distance away is the requirement. Wash hands frequently, sanitize hands. There is no standard signage, but you're familiar yourself with the protocol, and it's to remind us to do the things in the protocol. The sanitizing, the washing of hands frequently, these kind of things.
Is there a way when your staff is coming for inspection that they actually help to say and recommend and say this would be a place where I would like to see and so on? Well, the opinion can be different, what you think and what maybe the TPDCo thinks.
Most definitely. That is a part of why we are coming in to do the assessments. Yeah. So based on your protocol that you submit, we'll come in to see that you are adhering to what you say you're doing and make recommendations, because you might be in an inconspicuous location. Mm-hmm. So we say it's best to put it at the entrance when they come here or next to the bed, these kind of things. So that is why we're coming in to work with you to ensure that it's practical and safe.
Yeah. My reason while I'm asking is also, as we all know, we have hard times financially now behind us, and we don't know what is really ahead of us. We only assume. So we have, with the state of emergency since 2 years here on the North Coast, especially St. James, we are already affected financially heavily. Now on top of it, this virus worsened the whole situation, and by being so long now without any income, it's actually very tricky for many people to find now additional money to invest first before we even make any dollars. And so that's why is it for cost efficiency, my question, not unnecessarily spending money where it's not necessarily according to your recommendations and requirements.
I completely appreciate and can understand that point. But some of the things for smaller operators might not be as extensive and expensive as big properties, big hotels. A property like yours, for instance, I'm familiar with. So the outlay might not be as much as you're thinking. Probably the most expensive thing you might have to get is the thermometer, that hands-free thermometer, because everything else you'll be doing is laundering and cleaning. You're talking about bleach and rubbing alcohol, or things with alcohol, high alcoholic base for cleaning, all the high contact surfaces. So, laundry, adding for your whites. If you have white linen, which we recommend for a lot of bed linen, you use bleach. So you're bleaching the linen and so on. You take down your curtains, you wash them, you sun them. So it's not as expensive. I said the biggest outlet for a sign, a print and laminate a sign. That's not very expensive. You have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 rooms. That's 10 sheets of paper. That could be partitioned in 4 because the side room is not that big. So it's in the bedroom, it's the living room. So in a room might be 2, 3 signs in a room. So 1 A4 paper could be enough signage for 1 room. Okay. So I understand what you're saying. I completely appreciate it, but there are ways that you can go around it. You can make your own hand sanitizers. There are ways on the internet you can do it. You buy alcohol, they're sold in bulk. You can make them. Buy hand pump bottles at Bashco, put them in bottles, use them. So there are ways and means. Nobody's saying to go to Diversity Lever or one of these places or in an Ecolab to buy the most expensive hand dispenser thing. There are ways and means you can get it done inexpensively.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Hi, so I represent a villa management company in White House, Westmoreland. So I wanted to know if we would be considered a part of South Coast or North Coast, and if we are the South Coast, when will that phase begin?
The first phase runs until the end of this month, so I'm assuming this phase 2 you will go in phase 2.
In July, that will start?
South Coast. I'm saying the phase 1, the minister said, would run until June 30th.
Okay.
So I'm assuming in phase 2 will begin July 1.
Okay, and
which is
would I be
2 weeks from
considered
now.
South Coast?
In South Westmoreland?
Yes, in White House.
White House, actually White House, well, you're still on the South Coast because he said North Coast. So how TPDCo divides our regions, you would fall into that Negril region and not a part of the official South Coast region. But technically, logistically, realistically, you are there. So it's from Negril to Portland. So you would then fall, for this intent and purposes, on the south, I would believe.
Okay, thank you.
Could you explain more about that? I.e., if guests are visiting, are they allowed to go to Negril from Mo Bay, or are they in a designated zone?
From where?
Again, my understanding is that they're being encouraged to stay close to the corridor region, being that there are services in place that should any problem arise, they can be properly dealt with in terms of hospitals, police, etc. So they're being encouraged to stick to that main area as far as possible.
Yeah, so is a guest who's staying in Montego Bay allowed to go to Negril?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
I just want to give a little bit of guidance because I think some people are confused about villas, and the gentleman asked the question about what if a tourist refuses to have his temperature taken. If you run a villa, either you advertise it yourself and your owner, or you take the bookings and there is some correspondence. Alternatively, you do it through a property management company or you do it through an agency. All of those people are going to come together and communicate with the people that are coming to stay with you. Because remember, they're as scared as you are. Generally, it's going to take a while for them to have confidence to come back here. But I know my company, that's why I'm here. So I'm going to be sending every bit of information that I can to my guests and let them know that what we require to keep ourselves safe for when they're here as well as themselves. So it's not just looking after our tourists or not just looking after our employees. They should know before they come here what happens at the airport. They should know what happens if they test positive, where they go. Thus, my questions about isolation and quarantine. We need to be telling them all of the things that you require and that you will carry out before they even arrive, and then there will be no issues.
Absolutely, totally agree.
So
no surprises.
They need to know that they're going to fill in a form. Or prior to travel, I'm going to make sure that every one of my guests coming into any one of my villas has the form prior to travel. That means there isn't a queue of 12 people filling out a form as they get to their villa or their small hotel. It's all done beforehand. In that documentation, we're going to tell them that we're going to take everybody's temperatures. They're going to be happy that the staff having their temperatures taken morning and night, and they're going to be happy to do the same thing. Generally, we're dealing with tourists that come to villas. They are coming to a villa specifically because they like that intimate surrounding, the family feel. You know, we have an amazing repeat rate in our villas. So people want to come and want to join in and be part of it. So as long as you tell people beforehand what we expect of them, what's going to happen to them, how we're going to do this. You know, you used to be able to drive a 12-seat van with 10 guests in it. Now you're going to have a 12-seat van with 5 guests in it, or you're not going to be able to go on a day trip to Negril, or we don't recommend it because we're encouraging people to stay within their holiday places. But you've got to take that, sorry I'm hijacking you, but you've got to take that initiative to speak to the people who are coming so that they know before they get here, and then you won't have any issues.
Thank you very much for that. Well appreciated.
Yeah, good day, sir. Mr. Brown. I have a question for you, sir. What if my guests come at my villa and after test the first day, it doesn't have any contact, and you happen to swimming in the pool and so forth until when and I checked them now again, I found out that he has the COVID. What would I do with the pool? Must I drain the pool, or what would I do?
I don't think you'd have to drain the pool. Pools have, if they're well maintained, have pretty high chlorine content. So you shock the pool, you treat the pool, you do all the processes for your deep clean of a pool that you would normally do between your guests visiting, no? You normally do a thorough cleaning of your filters and everything of your pool. But that would be the least of your concerns at the time if your guest is contaminated. So that will come after everybody is isolated, quarantined, and fixed, so I appreciate the question, but that would not be your major concern. But you do your regular deep cleaning of your pool and shocking and treatment.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Etc. And public health will be coming in as well. Your water quality testing will be done for your pool, etc.
Hello. I have one question. In running a villa, so every year we have guests who will come during November, December, January, and they will get a cold or a flu. That happens all the time. Now in this situation with COVID, any symptom any symptom that shows could result in us being shut down or our rooms or villas being shut down. Is there anything in place or any kind of thought process about differentiating between the regular annual flu that occurs that we shouldn't be shut down for and discovering if it's really COVID and then shutting us down? Like, how are we protected by natural flu season?
Well, ma'am, unfortunately, at this moment in time, COVID mimics the regular flu, so we're not able to differentiate. So you just have to take all the necessary precautions to ensure that, they are not infected. And a test is the only way to determine that. So on isolation, quarantine, test done, all clear, regular flu, and Ministry of Health will take it from there. Well, from the point of contacting them that your guest has elevated temperatures and are showing flu-like symptoms. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm a chef at one of the villas. Now, when guests come in, we have to sit and talk to guests about their meals, planning and everything. The guests are free to come in the kitchen, touch everything, the fridge, everything and stuff like that. How we do go about it now since COVID-19 has come in?
Well, ma'am, it's not business as usual. You'll have to make a bit of modifications, and like our lady said, beforehand, you advise them of the expectations when they arrive. Regular monitoring and checks, and that part that was a regular part of your thing will have to be changed. So maybe you have to change how you do your thing. You might say, okay, we're going to, where you can partake in the thing, you take your barbecue grill outside and next to the pool deck, and they can see you doing your grilling on the thing, on the pool deck kind of thing. But
yeah, but from time to time, sometimes we even have guests and they're staying in the house and they have a problem with you telling them not to come in the kitchen to touch this, telling them not to come into the kitchen to touch.
The owners, visitors?
And at night when you're gone home, it's also free for them to come in and do whatever they want to do.
So you're talking about guests of the owner?
Yes.
That are not paying guests?
No, they're paying guests.
But? So I'm missing the question.
This is why the briefing initially is going to be very important, where you outline the fact that we're in a new era, COVID is real, and there are new precautions that must be taken so that there are no surprises. So what used to prevail is no longer going to be the case now. And obviously you respond to them in a very friendly and warm way as you can, but certainly for persons to be in the kitchen is not an acceptable approach during this COVID time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any support or certification from the TPDCo to indicate that the property is compliant with the Ministry of Tourism COVID-19 regulations?
Yes, certainly after the protocol assessment is done, recommendations made. Once you've met the requirements, you will be getting a certificate that you have been approved in terms of being safe. Yes.
Is there a sign-up process, or how do we go about doing that?
Well, basically, it will follow our protocol assessment, a protocol assessment by Product Quality Department. After you've submitted your plans and you've met the requirements, at that point, you will be issued with a certificate of approval. That certificate is valid for 3 months, so in fact it is an ongoing process. No, there is no charge.
Good morning. My question is, I know the agent would probably advise the guests when they're coming to stay in as much as possible, but not all the guests would want to stay in, right? Some would still go out, and sometimes they do not communicate with the property manager as much as you'd want them to communicate. Sometimes they communicate mostly with the transportation company, their driver. So when they go out, sometimes they go out maybe twice per day. Should we test them each time they go out and come back in?
We recommend so, yes.
It would be best?
We recommend so, yes. Screening, well, it's not, yes, it's screening. The temperature test, yes.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, too.
Hello, good morning. For the question I asked a while ago about the guests going in the kitchen, whenever the guests rent the villa for the whole week or the time what he or she is here, the kitchen is open to the guests. I don't know how I'm going to tell the guests that he or she can go in the kitchen when I gone to bed at night, because the kitchen is open to them. The food is there. If they want to go inside at night, I can't stop them because the food is there. They rent the villa for the week or whatever time. So I don't know how we're going to tell them that they can't go in the kitchen.
Well, certainly not when you are preparing food. Certainly not when you're in there, other staff are in there. Remember the physical distancing that we're trying to maintain. We're trying to reduce the risk of contamination. So it is certainly not to be encouraged because obviously it will increase the risk and the opportunity for contamination.
So whether the physical distance or not, when them go in there at night, and I don't know what they go and touch or anything like that. And
certainly when staff are in there working, in order to maintain the physical distancing and reduce the risk, it should not be encouraged at all.
Pertaining to the Airbnb, I presently have 2 places that I rent to the Airbnb people. And I've been getting people contacting me from Airbnb wanting to come. And I heard that you're saying that an assessment has to be done by you. When will this assessment be done? What is it that we need to put in place?
Okay. The first matter, ma'am, is are you licensed? Are those entities licensed? Once they are licensed and you have submitted a plan to show how you're going to meet the protocols, at that time we will schedule an assessment with you. And once that you've been approved by us, then you would be giving a certificate of approval, which you can show to your guests, which show that you are actually considered safe in terms of COVID-19.
Okay, what I need to find out from you, when you say license, because I have a guest house, and I have these entities within the guest house, which they have different names, but it's the same business. I pay taxes to the government. I pay room taxes every month to the government, and I am registered with the Airbnb. I pay over my money from the Airbnb to the government. So when you're saying that, I don't understand that because every month I pay the room taxes. Okay. So what is it?
In order to have tourists at your establishment, you need to have a Jamaica Tourist Board license.
Okay, so that is for the Airbnb because the regular guest house section is for my locals because during all of this, all my business was from my locals, so I want to keep that as it is. But the Airbnb, I have 2 places that I use just for the Airbnb, and I pay over that money to the Jamaican government as well. So what is the process to register with the tourist board? Because I have everything in place that the Airbnb, I've had over 100 comments and it's very good. And I'm doing very well with them. That already I'm getting bookings as of the 15th. So what is it I need to do to register with you?
Okay, I'm happy to share the process with you. If you'd like to see me afterwards, I will give you the contact information.
I don't know other people would like to do that.
And we can send you the application form and give you details of the process.
Of course,
in order to get the license.
Yes, because we still pay the taxes.
Not a problem.
That. There are just 2 comments that I'd like to make. And one is to the gentleman who spoke about the guests being in the kitchen at night. When you come in the morning, make sure you sanitize the kitchen. Sanitize as per the protocols, right? And you encourage them. Sometimes it's not the what, it's the how. Some persons are going to want to do what they want to do, but you have to explain to them in a nice way that we're trying to do this for you as much as we're trying to do this for ourselves, you know? We want to keep them safe, and we want to also be safe ourselves. And the other thing is that on our website, you can find a tourism map which outlines that corridor that the Minister of Tourism spoke about, from Negril to Port Antonio, and it will give them a sort of a guide as to where to go, where not to go, where we're doing the assessments and doing the work, and getting those compliance certificates in and out. Remember, you can also use your compliance certificates as part of your marketing tool, right? So it's important to meet the criteria. And you can also send those persons who have confirmed to come the tourism map so that they will have a guide as to, you know, what that corridor looks like, where they can and where they can't. All right? Do we have any further questions? I trust we have answered them all. Everybody will be sent electronically. If you registered and you left an email address, we will send you the full document, all of 120 pages. It has been done in a modular fashion, so you can pick out the segment that pertains to you. You don't have to read the entire document if you don't want to, though information and knowledge is power, so you could, but it's done in the different segments. Your section is, I think, 20 pages. Small hotels, guest houses, hostels, Airbnb, short-term rentals, and homestays. Your page 39 to 58, just 19 pages. So you can pull that out and really sink your teeth into it, get a better understanding of what are the requirements for your sector. And then, of course, you can browse and see what else is there for the other persons, like your transportation people that you'll have to deal with, attractions, and so forth, because everything ties in, right? It's not like you're isolated over here. Everything ties in, and we're all a part of one big team. All right, so I encourage you to visit our website. It's www.tpdco.org.